Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria and this is where I talk about all the bookish things that I love. So for today's video, I'm going to be doing the historical romance reader tag that was created by Jess from Peace Love Books. She just recently made this tag. I'll link it down below. I love this. I love tag videos. I think they're so fun, not only to film but also to watch. I just love getting to know people and what their thoughts are on things, and I'm a huge fan of historical romance, so I thought I'd do this. So I have the questions in front of me, and then I have my notes here, so we're gonna jump right in. So the first question is, what was the first historical you ever read? I should have put these stack of books in order. Oh no. Hang on. Okay, sorry. So the first question is, what was the first historical romance you ever read? And many people who, if you watch my channel, will know that my first historical was The Duchess Deal. I read it in January of 2020, and then spent the entire year of 2020 and into this year reading more historical romances. But this was my first one. It is about a duke who he was injured and scarred, and his fiance broke up with him, but he really needs to get married, and he's like talking about how much he needs to get married when the woman who designed his ex-fiance's wedding dress shows up at his door wearing that wedding dress and saying, hey, you may have broken up with your fiance, so there's not going to be or your fiance might have broken up with you, so there's not going to be a wedding, but I made this dress, so I still need to get paid. And he's like, hey, I need a wife, you're in a wedding dress, let's get married. And they end up making this deal where they have a marriage of convenience. That is the pretty setback. But I loved it. I think it was the best intro into historical romance, and I love it. The second question was oh no, I keep knocking things over when I film right here. The next question is, what was the last historical romance that you read? And this one I don't have a physical copy of because I really want the original with the step back, but this was Stranger in My Arms by Lisa Kleypas. This one is the, what month is it? March. This is the March, read for the Rake Appreciation Society book club, which is run by Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life and Jenn from the Book Refuge, and I really enjoyed it. It is about a woman whose husband died. They had a marriage of convenience and she wasn't into him. Like, they didn't get along, they didn't really like each other, she really didn't like him. And he died, and she was actually like kind of happy about it because she likes the freedom of being a widow and she didn't like being married. And then a man claiming to be her dead husband shows up to take back his like inheritance and like his like rightful place as the lord or whatever. He was titled, and he wants like his money and his house back and his wife back, and he has to convince her that he's actually the husband. And I really liked it. I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion because I can see why some people might not like it, but it really worked for me. I really liked it. Number 3 is, who is an underrated historical romance author you wish more people read? So the thing about this question is, it was really hard for me because I've only been reading historical romance for like under a year and a half. I've stuck to a lot of the like very known authors because I still get my recommendations from other people. But one that I've read only a couple of her books, but I really like them, and I don't see her mentioned as like one of the big historical romance authors very often, is Eva Lee. She just had a release in February called Waiting for a Scot Like You, and it was so good. And I love the way that she writes her heroes. I think that they're so well written and so like men that I would love to be with. But I would love to see more people read her. But I would love to find more underrated historical romance authors, which is another reason why I love this tag, that I'll be able to watch everyone else's tags and find more authors that other people think are underrated. The fourth question is, who is a historical romance author you haven't read yet but need to? So many. Like I said, stick to a lot of like new very popular, well-known authors, but there are some, especially some who write older historicals, that I haven't gotten around to yet. But two that I really want to get to that I think I'll really like are Eloisa James. I have a couple of her books and they sound really, really good, and like they would be right up my alley. And the other one that I really want to get to is Victoria Alexander. I have seen some people talk about her, but I really like her stepbacks, and the synopsis on a lot of her books just sound very like interesting, like very different than any other historicals that I've read. Like they have very like what's the word that I'm looking for, very exciting and intriguing plots that are different than, they're like not just the same thing over and over again. Number 5 is, what historical romance would you recommend to people who are new to the genre? And I 100% would recommend Tessa Dare. Where is it? This one. I would recommend Tessa Dare just in general. She is such a good, would be such a good, words that I'm saying, author for people who are new to historical romance. And I know that because she was mine, but her books read like contemporaries, but in a historical setting. They're very easy to read. There's no like hard language. And I know that with like a lot of people get like maybe intimidated by historicals with like all the titles and the rules of society and the time period, but hers are done really, really well. And I also think her heroines are very forward thinking. Like I know that one of my biggest things with historical romance before I started reading them was that I was afraid that a lot of the heroines would be like virgin, helpless, not able to do anything, just want a husband type of come across that way, because women didn't have a lot of agency in the time period. But Tessa Dare's heroines are so forward thinking and so strong, and very much will like put the men in their place if they don't like what they're doing. And I really, really appreciate that, and I think it would be really good for somebody who is getting into the genre. Another one that I think would be really good is Sarah McLean, especially this book. I love this book. It's one of my favorite historical romances, and this one is about a girl who has always like done what's told of her and has always followed all the rules, and she's like kind of sick of it, and she's like, this hasn't gotten me anywhere, so I'm gonna like break the rules and I'm gonna like do the things that I really want to do that I'm not allowed to do. And then she has this guy who is a marquis help her with this, and then they end up falling in love. But it's another one that's such a strong heroine who speaks her mind and does what she wants, and I really appreciated that, and I think that it would be really good for somebody who's starting historicals. So that's that. Number 6 is, what is your favorite historical romance of all time? So mine is Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks. I absolutely adore this book. It's so, so good. So this one is a Scottish historical where it is a marriage between two rival clans. The daughter of the laird of one clan and the laird of the other clan are forced to get married by the king, who is trying to prevent a war between the clans. So he's basically saying that you two need to get married and you need to like get along to join the clans so that I'm stronger and that there's no war between the clans. And Evelyn is the heroine. Everyone thinks that she's daft. Everyone thinks that she has had her mind addled. She was thrown from a horse and she was never the same after that. She doesn't talk. She gets very spacey. She doesn't like respond when you talk to her all the time. And so you find out that Evelyn is actually deaf and she reads lips, but when she's looking away, she can't see the lips, and so she doesn't respond. So she doesn't know that people are talking to her unless she's looking directly at them, so she won't respond a lot of the time. But nobody knows that. She like keeps it a secret. So when she gets married to Graham and she moves to his clan, she thinks of it as like a new beginning where she can like be herself. She doesn't have to hide anymore. And one thing that I absolutely adore about this book is Graham. He is the sweetest man. He's so, so nice to Evelyn. And his brothers are so angry about the fact that he has to get married, but he very much is like, okay, this is the fate. I have to get married. I'm going to be a good husband. I'm going to do a good job. Everyone, she's my wife now. She's under my protection. Nobody's going to be mean to her. Because like his whole clan doesn't like her because she's from this rival clan, and he's like, you need to be nice to her. She's my wife. She's part of this clan now. I don't care if you don't like the Armstrongs. Yeah, if you don't like the Armstrongs, she's a Montgomery now. And I really, really liked him. And there's this one part where his brothers are like, oh, nobody will blame you if you take like a mistress, because you can't have sex with your wife because she's crazy. And he doesn't want to take advantage of her. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. She's my wife. I'm going to be faithful to her. This is how life's going to be now. And it's just so, so sweet. And the love that is created between Evelyn and Graham is just so adorable. And I love it so, so much. So while that is my number one favorite historical romance, I did want to mention a couple of other favorites that I have. One being The Highlander by Kerrigan Byrne. I really love Kerrigan Byrne in general, but The Highlander and, I didn't grab this one, but How to Love a Duke in 10 Days are my two favorites from her. I really, really enjoy them. Obviously, I like Scottish romances. But those ones are really great. And then I also wanted to mention The Secret by Julie Garwood, which is another one of my all-time favorite historical romances. This one is an old school historical, and it's also Scottish. Then number 7 is, do you prefer new or old school historical romances? I am definitely on the side of new historical romances. Most of the historical romances that I read were published after 2000, even more like after like 2010. I had a lot of difficulty, or have had in the past a lot of difficulty with reading old school historical romances because I am very strongly against the consent issues that are in them. And so I will read the occasional old school historical, but only if I get a recommendation from somebody else who has read it first, who tells me that there are not consensual problems in it. But I mean, Julie Garwood, this is The Secret, is an old school, and it's one of my all-time favorites. So there are definitely, I do enjoy them. I mean, I read Night Song by Beverly Jenkins for the Historical Hellions book club, and I enjoyed that one a lot. I've read a couple of old school Lisa Kleypases that are really good. But there are just, I have to know ahead of time that there's no consent problems in them. Number 8 is, what are your favorite historical romance tropes? So my favorite trope is when there's a rake and a spinster. So like a woman who everyone thinks is like on the shelf, and then there's like a popular like duke who is like a rake who falls in love with the spinster. I love that. I think it's great. I really love Scottish brutes. So like when a woman is like English and she thinks that she wants to like marry like a high titled man, and then she meets like a Scottish brutish man who doesn't really fit into England society but still has a title, and they fall in love. Really into that. Another thing that I really love is, like I said, with Maya Banks, I love when it deals with disability and how they're dealt with in the time period. So she's deaf, and then this one is Elizabeth Hoyt. This one, she's blind. And then there's another one, Jennifer Ashley's The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie. He is on the autism spectrum, and I really like that one. So I'm a really big fan of seeing how the time period deals with disability. So those are some of my favorites. Number 9 is, what are your favorite historical romance settings? If it's not already clear, I like Scotland. I really like the settings of Scotland. I like the way that the world worked there and how much they love their country, and don't like English people and don't want to be forced to be in English society, and you're just like away from like the mainstream English tone. And I like the setting of Scotland and being with like somebody who's a little bit more wild and a little bit more like connected to the earth and less like pretty dresses and like rigid structure. Number 10 is, what is the oldest historical romance that you own? So I looked through one of my shelves. I couldn't get to some of the other ones, but the one that I found that is the oldest is Love Only Once by Joanna Lindsay. I've never read this book, but it's from 1985. I might have one that's a little bit older, but this is the only one that I could find on the one shelf that I looked at. This one is, I really like the old cover, and it has like the yellowing pages, so decently old, much older than me. Number 11 is, what is your favorite step back that you own? So I already showed this book, Dearest Rogue by Elizabeth Hoyt, but this is my all-time favorite step back. I just think it's so beautiful. I love the colors. I love the way he's looking at her. And I like that she has her eyes closed because she's blind in this one. So it's like more like the feeling that she has and the emotion that's shown through their touch together. And but he is looking at her so like tenderly and dearly. And then her dress is just the most beautiful blue with the green background. I just think it's so lovely. Elizabeth Hoyt does a lot of 2-page step backs like this, and I really like them. Number 12 is, what historical romance releases are you excited for? So I looked up there are a couple that I'm excited for. So The Bride by Tessa Dare, which is her newest book, which is the last one in the Girl Meets Duke series. That one was supposed to release, I think, this the beginning of this year, but it's been pushed back like a ton, so I don't know when that one releases, but I'm excited to get to that one. Another one is Scoundrel of My Heart by Lorraine Heath. That one comes out, I think, actually this month. I read my first Lorraine Heath this month and I really liked it, so I'm excited to read that one. That sounds really interesting. Then the last question, number 13, is, what creators do you follow for historical romance recommendations? So I follow a lot of people for historical romance recommendations. I'll link a whole bunch of them down below, but the first person who I found that talked about historical romance, who I got a lot of my recommendations from really in the beginning, was Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers. She was the first person that, when I first got into historical romance, that I was like looking it up, and that's who I found, and I read a lot of her recommendations. Another one then is also Jess, who created this tag from Peace Love Books. I love her videos. She's probably my go-to right now. I also really like Jenn from The Book Refuge and Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life. I take part in their Break Appreciation Society book club, which reads historical romances, and I really enjoy those. There are also a bunch of people on Instagram, so I'll try and link a couple of Instagrams down below, but Books and Boops shares so many amazing step backs from historicals, so I really like her. I buy a lot of her step backs that she shows, so I get like recommendations for books to buy from her. Pink Helen Reads, who created Step Back Saturday, which is a hashtag that is used on Instagram every Saturday to share historical romance step backs. She has amazing pictures. There are many, so I will link some down below, but that was all the questions. I hope that was interesting. I had fun filming it. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.